Live right now. Yeah, I don't think we've ever really
scripted much.
ever. ever. Okay, and that's up, and we're sound in. Okay. Is this, and I
That's the opening music every time.
Yeah.
Do. Yep, we're live.
All right.
Welcome to the show, everyone.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Today we have Miss Gail Hayssen with us.
Yes.
Gail, where are you calling in from?
Sebastopol, California.
Oh.
Now you sound like you're from back east.
Yeah, I was gonna say your accent doesn't necessarily match.
No, born in New York. Can't get rid of the accent.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, Gail has quite the repertoire of things, but we wanted to kind of just first start the interview out, if we could, with Gail kind of introducing herself, telling us a little bit about herself and, what she's currently doing.
Yeah. Get some chatting.
Well, let's see. Currently, I'm working on launching a podcast starting in August. It should be out. It'll be called A Small, Medium, at Large Podcast with Gail Hayssen.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been interviewing people in the last couple of months so that I build up a bunch of interviews. So when I launch, we have people ready to be on the show, ready to go. I just finished working on a book proposal, and I have an agent that's showing this to some publishers in New York, hoping for good luck and something happening. I do as much as I can to help people around where I am right now. I like to prepare meals and stuff for my mother, who's 90 something, and other friends I have that are, older, that I like to drop by foods every now and then. I had someone just describe me the other day as a combination of a pioneer, because I live on 15 acres of apple trees in an orchard here in Northern California.
I love that.
Oh, well, we grow a lot of food. A lot of food grows here. So I have peaches and plums and pears, and I have all kinds of berries. In fact, when we hang up, I'll be changing out of these lovely clothes and into my rubber gloves and long sleeves and picking mulberries for the next few hours, because our mulberry tree is just overloaded. And that's the thing. The fruit doesn't wait for you. You've got to pick it when it's ready, and it makes amazing jams, and I send them out to people and friends. In fact, the people that are on my podcast, I sent them grape jelly and banana nut bread to thank them.
Oh, nice. That's been a struggle of ours, is thank you stuff, how to facilitate that.
What does that look like? What are you saying?
Yeah, how do we and we do go through a middle person, so it's a lot to line up. But
that's awesome.
How did you get started down the path of,
like
psychic
mediumship? And were you always a medium? I know I asked this question to every guest, but how did you know?
Yeah. What led you to it?
So first off, it was only, I never put myself in any of those particular categories, like say, I specialize in this or I do that. I find I'm sort of like, master of none, or what's that saying? Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Oh yeah. So when it comes into those fields, I seem to be able to do things in all these different areas. But I've never said, oh, I'm only a medium, or, oh, I'm only a remote viewer, or, oh, I'm just psychic. So I don't really do that with myself. For me, it's more like a way of living, or how it's been this way for me since I'm a young child. So there's been experiences that I know, or dreams that I had. And then it's a very long ride as I start off into the journey of all the different things that happen along the way that develop your talent or skills in this. It's something for me that's led me in different paths at different times by the experiences I was having. So I think the most, let's see, I think growing up, first of all, with a grandmother from Poland who lived in our house. And when I would go downstairs, we lived upstairs, they lived downstairs. They were they were not Orthodox Jews, but they were, they were practicing kosher. They weren't super religious, but they were very religious to us because my father raised us as atheists. Mm-hmm. So unlike you, who had that kind of upbringing, I had the upbringing where there was no religion. So I didn't have any of that, like put into my head at all. And what I did have was a grandmother who would wake up and tell me how in the night she had, but this is with a Yiddish accent, I can't really repeat it exactly the same way. So it's a combination of Yiddish and English. And she would say to me how, her son Label came to visit last night, or her brother, somebody or other. So different people who had died in her life, she would tell me she'd just spend time with them during the night, that they'd come to visit, and that she would have talks with them. And I was only, 6 years old, 7, 8 years old. And I didn't find this strange at all. It seemed like, oh, okay, you do that, that's great. You know what I mean? I didn't think of it as anything unusual.
Do you think that possibly a touch of psychic ability, do you think that possibly is genetic or
yeah, is there anyone
or is it
else
a learned trait?
I mean, because obviously your grandma.
I don't know if it's genetic or DNA or what it is, but when I've consulted with people on emails who are having experiences and they need a little support or validation because they don't know what's going on, I've often found, and include that in myself, that there is another member in their family. It could be 2 generations ago, it could be a grandparent, it could be a great-grandparent, but they'll be all of a sudden, they'll say, oh, wait, there was this relative, and they'll remember a story of someone in their family having some kind of, either telling danger coming or them knowing about something in a dream. So I do think that there's usually some other member in the family that is having some sort of open channel to things that other members might not be. And I think that if they accept it and allow it, you'd realize that we all have these psychic abilities available to us. That's the part that it isn't just the great grandma, it's actually everybody in the family, but there's different things that I've seen that sort of shuts off that channel or turns it off. Not that it's not still there, but I don't know much about religion, but I think that in a lot of religions, I don't think that they, necessarily think that it's a great thing if you think you're having paranormal experiences.
Yeah, it's shut right off.
Yeah, I would say most religions.
Yeah, it's heavily discouraged. They in most religions, they believe that it is coming straight from the devil, and that this kind of evil cannot be entertained. Mm. And so you're taught to A, don't believe it, this is stupid, or B, if you believe it, you need to recognize that it is of Satan.
Or keep it quiet.
That's why they burned all those so-called witches.
Yes.
Often those were actually healers, people that were doing things to help other people, and that was too far into them, whatever healing method they were using, and they were burned for doing witchcraft, not healing.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned your grandma had dreams. Have you ever had dreams of experienced dreams of people?
Oh yes. Oh, I've been dreaming since I'm a young girl. I've had dreams about things that are going to happen in the future, or dreams of. They're most often there, except for births. They're usually often trauma kind of things where somebody will get hurt or those kind of dreams more than. But I've had a great sex dream. Somebody that was really fabulous. If you want, I'll be happy to share it. I had another dream. I've often had dreams of births. So whether they were my own, I have 3 wonderful grown children, and every single one of them I knew I conceived in a dream, my grandmother stands at the end of my bed and she's throwing fishes on me. And she says, "Oh, and you're having a baby." So I wake up and I say, "Oh my God, I'm having a baby." But I haven't missed my period yet. I don't know yet that it's true if I'm pregnant or not. But in every single child, I've had the dream then, and also what the sex of the child will be. So I also dream other people's babies and what they're going to have. So these are the happier dreams. So one day, my sisters used to make fun of me about, because sisters,
Yeah.
I
are one.
Yeah. So I'm just saying they would tease me or make fun of me and my little predictions of things. And so I finally stopped telling them about stuff I would have. And one day my sister Lori called and said, "I don't understand. You didn't have a dream about my baby. How come you haven't told me if I'm having a boy or a girl yet? What's going on?" And these were more in the times when people didn't know what the sex of the child was. So, I'm in my 60s, so we're talking, back a ways. So I said to her, "Well, I'll ask for a dream." And I had what I call this story "Dream on Request." And I went to sleep. And when I went to sleep, I said, "Okay, I need to know what my sister Lori's going to have. Is she having a boy or a girl?" And when I went to sleep, the telephone rings. And in my dreams, whenever I get a dream where it's information on a telephone, because that's always been a really good form of communication for me. I get across by speaking to somebody, not by emails or text or whatever. I like speaking to the person.
Mm-hmm.
So, but of course, in those days, you only used phones. We didn't have cell phones even then when I was having these dreams. And so I pick up the phone, and on the dream, it's my sister Lori, and she says, "It's a girl, 8 pounds, 6 ounces."
Oh
I
my
said,
God.
"Okay, bye." And we hang up the phone. And then I wake up and I remember the dream because I asked for the dream. And I call her up, and she's about 3 weeks before giving birth. And I say, "It's a girl, 8 pounds, 6 ounces." So she says, "All right." So they hang up. So, I'm in my 3 weeks later, she gives birth, and her husband and her know about that it's a girl, 8 pounds, 6 ounces. And she gives birth to a girl, 8 pounds, 6 ounces exactly. And she calls me up and she said, "I will never doubt you ever again."
That's right. Sweet revenge.
Now I can tell you a terrible dream. September 10th, I was upstairs in my bed, and I have 3 bedrooms upstairs. And I was upstairs in the bedroom, and I had such horrific nightmare. And I don't have nightmares that often. I mean, I had them when I was a kid, but I don't have nightmares now as an adult very often. And I had this nightmare that I was struggling to breathe, and I was completely engulfed in crumbles of stuff and dirt and things, and I was just all in a completely collapsed some sort of situation, and I needed air and I couldn't breathe. And that kind of nightmare where you have that anxiety and you want to wake up and you want to say, "This isn't really a dream. I have to get out of here. I want, this isn't real. I mean, this is a dream, but I want to get out of this." And I was trying to claw my way out of this debris to get out. And I was struggling and struggling to breathe. And then I woke up, that kind where you fling out of your bed and you go. Well, that evening, a very, very dear friend of mine had passed away. And the next morning was 9/11. And the combination of both of those, I don't know, the feeling of loss of, this was a really powerful man who was in his 80s who had passed on, and I had seen him about a couple of weeks before. The intensity of something like the 9/11 experience, I think, affected many people in dreams and things around the world, where there were many people who had a precognitive, or whatever you want to call it. I can't say it as any proof of anything. I'm just saying what I experienced. And I'm sure that it had something to do with that coming of such a massive disaster. I don't have that kind of if I have a nightmare more, it would be maybe I was drowning or something, not that I was, enclosed like that. You know what I'm saying?
Like maybe you're all connected, or maybe we are all connected, I guess, to a larger field of energy. I can imagine how many people who do this, like how many had those types of like panicky dreams just prior to this happening.
Well, in some of the chat groups and things that I was on at that time, there was quite a few different people who were very intuitive, that people who've had that exact kind of experience. I think there was a lot. It's just that that's not what the media, they're not going to focus on that.
No, they had a bigger agenda at hand. When you're young and you start discovering these skills, how did you practice them, build them? Did you put yourself out there as a medium, or did you?
No, in fact, only this month when I did 3 shamanic cleansings on 3 different individuals that I know, and one of them was long distance. And when I experienced the results with them and what it did for them, at the end I said, I must be a medium,
There must be something to this.
So what's the shamanic cleanse that you did?
Well, first let me answer your first question. How did I get to this place? So before I was 15, or somewhere around when I was 15 also, I would have things like, I would know deaths, that were deaths without the person's knowing the death was coming. So like my grandfather was walking down the steps and he was going off to work, and I was living in California then, but I had come home to visit. And when he went down the steps and he was carrying his lunch, I looked at him and I thought, oh my God, Grandpa's going to die now. And I can't tell you where the information comes from, but for me, it's sort of an auditory thing. I just sort of hear this information. And I'm sure that a lot of other people have similar experiences like that, but they might discount it or not let the voice come through. And the more you acknowledge and allow the voice, then the clearer and stronger I feel it becomes, because you're honoring something about your inner voice, which we all have. So I called up my dad, who's out here in California then, and said, Grandpa's going to die. He says, how do you know Grandpa's going to die? And I said, I don't know how I know. I just know that he's going to die. And he said, God. And 2 weeks later, my grandfather was in the hospital with massive blockage of colon cancer that he didn't survive coming out of the hospital and died. And my father had to fly out and la. So I have a lot of those kind of things. Well, around that same time, which I can tell by looking that you're much younger than me.
Well, I don't know about that.
During the early 70s, there was every guru and self-help guy, and you can't imagine how much of this was going on, but there was tons of it. And you lost your friends to maybe the fat boy or the Krishna guy. Or I don't know. I'm just saying everybody.
Yeah. Well,
everyone was looking for a place where they belong.
Well, Moonies were a big one.
They were searching, but they were also, people were getting spirituality, but at the same time, there was a lot of shysters.
Yeah.
Just like
that's a New York word.
Yeah, people that they make money feeding off of your loss or your needs or something like this. So there was one particular group called Mind Dynamics, and it was founded on the theories of Rosicrucianism and L. Ron Hubbard, and it took from all those different things that were floating around and formed this man, Alexander Everett, formed this conference or whatever workshop thing called Mind Dynamics. And you would go there and you'd pay $150. And there was always money involved in all these things.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And you always all worked for free, remember?
Yep.
And everybody was going to give. I mean, I had friends who, whatever organization they went for, they gave away their furniture. They gave them everything. So there was a lot of this going on. So my boyfriend and I didn't have $150 to take this course, but we went and listened to a lecture in someone's living room out in the marina in San Francisco in a very wealthy, fancy home. And it was given by this man, Werner Erhard, who went on later to form his own organization called Esp, Erhard Seminars Training, because he realized that he could make millions on people doing this, selling the course, as they
Do you
call
think they actually believe that they're helping people, or do you think they set out with the intention of just robbing?
Milking money.
Yeah.
Well, my dad was at the dinner that Werner had when he was leaving the Mind Dynamics and going to Est. And in it, he said to everybody, because he wanted them all to join. You know, my father was one of the core. We were in Werner's second class that he ever taught ever to anyone. So we were his like foundation first people type people. So we were real like devotees.
Mm-hmm. The originals.
The original devotees. And my father was very frugal. He reused dental floss. So for him to give you $150 was like a very big deal. But he was sold on the pitch also. And the pitch was when you went into the living room, there'd be a beautiful woman sitting there, and Werner, who was a very handsome, charismatic, gorgeous man, and he would say, when you came into the lecture, fill out this card. And he gave you this card. I could show you these things, but I had them all in a file somewhere. And the card would say, fill out the name of someone you know, the illness that they have, the age that they are, and the city that they live in. And that's all you wrote on the card. So in the beginning, say there was 20 people at this, living room talk, and you'd fill it out, and then he'd pick out one of the cards of one of the people sitting there who wrote about someone they knew. And he'd sit there with the woman next to him, and he'd say, I'm going to count her down to her levels. And she's going to go to her workshop. And in her workshop, she's going to tell us about, Gail Hayssen, and age 66, lives in Sebastopol, California, and what her illnesses are. And within minutes, these people would show you and tell you about the sickness or the thing about the person. And at the end, he'd say, and the other person in the audience would be going, oh my God, that's exactly right, la, la, la. And so people at the end would say, I have to sign up to do this. I want to be able to do this. And the idea would be that you're going to heal and help the person by, putting gold light on them, doing things to, whatever it was you felt that would help somehow heal what their illnesses were.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw that, after my other different earlier 15-year-old experiences, I wanted to take this course. So my dad said, I'll take the course first. And if I think it's worthy, I'll let you know. So my dad signs up, and 2 days into the course, he comes rushing out and he signs up the whole family for the course. My mother, my brothers, me,
my God,
my boyfriend. I mean,
Really?
and he was a car mechanic. He didn't have a lot of money. They didn't make big money in those days. And he was so sold by what he'd seen and heard. And that how you could get rid of headaches, you could improve your sleep, you could increase your memory. So there was all these different things besides working on healing people who were sick.
So did any of it work?
Did you take the course? You took the whole thing?
Of course I took the course. I couldn't be more thrilled to. So I go to take the course, and you graduate when you do your first body or case, as they called it. And that was on the fourth day. That would be the last thing after you've done all kinds of different exercises, which were taken from all different sorts of spiritual and other realms. So you would be practicing, petting a cat in your lap, which is almost like a meditative sort of thing. You would be doing different things that was calming your mind, or as they said, you were bringing your mind into different levels. It was the alpha, the beta, the delta, the theta. I can't remember which one you wanted to be. I think it was the alpha state. And that when you're in that state, you can do all this healing and all this amazing work. So in this 4 days, you'll learn how to do this. But for me, because of being just the way that I was, so open, by the first day, I was able to start doing cases right away. And I have to say, me and my brothers were the only people under 18 or 20 that were in these. There were no kids running around. This was not, there weren't other teenagers there. And so when I did that, it opened up all these other doors for me. It was giving me like a tool to work with the kind of things that I have happen with me, and it was making them much clearer and stronger signals of information. So when I first started doing bodies, at first when I'd scan over a body, I would only be drawn to the areas where the person was ill. Like I would see that it was the liver, and I would see like a dark blackness in this image of this person's body that I was visualizing in this workshop. By time I had been doing them for a year and a half, they were using me in the main office to do cases that people couldn't do. That when they give them that card, the persons wouldn't be able to figure out the illness. And I was able to do the ones that other people were not able to do. So it was giving me some kind of confidence, like, oh, wow, I can do this and they can't do this, And then I was used by some of the other instructors and also Werner. And I would be on stage in front of hundreds of people. Like I was at the St. Francis Hotel, and Werner regressed me back into my childhood and then back into life before that. And this was all videotaped and done in front of audiences. And then he would say, and you could do this if you sign up for our course. I think by the time we left, it was $250 for the course. So, kept going up in increments. And when Werner decided to leave that organization, and he was their best instructor, and had this dinner with my dad, he said, we can make millions at this. We can make millions. So to answer that question, I think his motive was making millions more than it was healing. Because when I had my very, very bad experience, and by the way, we worked for him for over a year and a half, everything was free. And you did, and people were on waiting lists to work for free for this group. So, and it was all white class, middle, it was not by any means mixed races in these things that were being attracted to this and paying this money. So it was a certain kind. It was groomed. Well,
I think that the cost to join would have excluded most blue collar and
exactly.
Yeah.
So what happens is I'm doing so many bodies, and years later, and we were raised with no medical intervention, no doctors, no dentists. And so I knew nothing about medications or any of this sort of thing. By the time I'd been doing this, after a year or whatever, I could tell them the drugs inside the person's body. And I'm telling you, I'm telling you the truth of what I experienced. I would start to be doing people's bodies. I did so many cases, hundreds and hundreds of bodies, and I'd only got better and better at it. And it got to a point of scariness, because in dealing with the invisible or working in this field of healing and other things, now when you do anything like this, you're taught about protecting yourself.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But in those days, there was nothing like that. It was
Where
just
you
like,
write
here,
out.
do this, here's somebody dying. Somebody I was working on was dying of emphysema. And when I would see these bodies, I would work on them every day for a week. I wouldn't just do that in that one time. I would go home, and with a sincerity and my complete attention was to really try to help them. That was really my goal. And yes, I did get back funny responses from people who said, I don't know what you did with my mother, but when I got home, we had an amazing time together. We seemed to have healed whatever our difficulty was. There were strange things people would say. I don't know that, all these people that I'm telling you that I did, hundreds of, I've never met the persons or known anything about them. They were all part of this mind dynamics, or, they're files of people. But when I did ones where we went to a place and did a retreat, this last one that I did was someone who was dying. And there was something about that dying essence that did not leave. And since I wasn't taught protection, I started getting very scared that it was going to take over my own self.
What year was this?
So I went to Werner, And I said, I think something's trying to possess me and I need help. And I called the office. I left him messages. I called. And this is a person I dedicated all my time for.
Right.
And when I needed them, there was no one in the organization. The line was, you create your own reality.
What year was this when you had
This
that?
was 1972.
So this was back in 72. So
let me just tell you what ended up happening. So I said to him, you're not going to help me? They're not going to help me? And so I turned to my dad, who'd always been a very wonderful spiritual advisor, and he said, you have to face whatever it is that's coming at you in order to get rid of it. So I went to bed that night, and I had what I can't say it was a dream, but it was as real as regular life, though it was the dream world. I had all of my senses. I could smell, taste. And in the dream, I discovered the man who I had been working on that was dying was like in the distance in my dream, and he was like transparent. And I looked down at my arms, and when I looked at my arms, they just like opened up and blood was just pouring out of my arms. And I realized that this man was trying to latch onto me to stay alive. And I said, you cannot do this. You have to go. And I had a cat in the house at the time, and the cat was like running around like a crazy energy like this, going around in circles. And when I told him he had to leave, he had to go, that he could not take hold of me in any way, he started to just fade away. And all the energy in the room that felt like electrical charges running around all ceased, and it became very quiet. And when I woke up, or whatever it is that happened where I came through from this, everything was gone. And there was no more any issue about this. And in that, I left the organization. And I said, I'm not going to do any kind of psychic, remote viewy body case or anything ever again. And I will only do whatever comes natural to me. Because in those 2 years, I would have people come up to me, oh, could you tell me about my mother? Could you do this one? Could you do that? And I would be doing these things, and, I could be at somebody's house and doing one. And I said, I'll never do it again.
That's like a combination of remote viewing and healing.
Yes. So I never did it again, except for everything that came to me naturally. I wasn't going to do any more sit down and go to your workshop and, follow this little protocol and la. And I was so busy with all the natural things that happened for all the next 40 years that I always wonder what would I be like had I continued following that protocol, because you do get better at anything you practice. But I never did anything again until 1998, when I met two famous scientists, Dean Radin and Russell Targ. And these are men who are very highly respected in the fields of paranormal research. And also, Russell is very famous in physics and lasers. And anyways, they worked at a company my husband was at, and they were looking for people who had any kind of psychic experiences to be part of a study they were doing and to participate in experiments. And that was when I first decided that I would now let myself be. I knew I wasn't going to be a shill for these people. There was no money involved. They weren't selling me for something, because I don't support that for myself. What other people do is other people's business. But for me, if I know something or feel something, or I would never want someone to give me money in exchange for that.
Right.
To me, this is information that comes from a universe that doesn't have money involved in it. That's my feelings about it.
So do you think, I have a few questions real quick. Do you think that the guy who started, or the guys who started that organization, do you think that they had some abilities, or do you think they faked it but got people to work for them that had those abilities?
I think anybody like them that was doing research into it.
Not the researchers, the Warner and the other guy.
Well, what they did, when I say research, is they went in and met with, they went and read the L. Ron Hubbard book. They took, it they took stuff from all the
Red
different things
Dianetics. I've tried making it through anything L. Ron Hubbard wrote.
that-
Dianetics
Painful.
is I couldn't make it through it. I tried reading Battlefield Earth, all of them. They're I just can't make it through it.
Well, my dad gave Werner a book that my father then saw. He used parts of it for his instruction, that he knew he removed stuff from the book too. And it was a book he gave to me as a teenager, which I think also this kind of a book to give to a teenager isn't your normal information book. And I highly recommend it if anybody's listening. It's available again in print. I think it was written in 1920s or something, or 40s. I'm not sure. It's a very old book, but it's called Thinking and Destiny. And it's by a man named Harold Percival. And this book is like an encyclopedia of anything you want to know in different things of this area. So what I would use it for, it's a 1,000-page book. So it was nothing you would sit and actually read from one end to the other. But I would just hold it in my hands and say, what do I need to know and learn right now? And I'd open it up and it would tell you about, the bardos or the different experiences of the dying process. So I think having that kind of stuff in my background, and also we lived in a vegan commune and we had guests that came. So that was my first exposure to the idea that there could be aliens. We had people that said they were taken away in a flying saucer. It's not particularly anything I want to talk about, but I'm just saying I was exposed to a lot of unusual things that as a child, I think it helps open your mind to be able to accept other things when you hear or read about them. So I did not know that I could do so many different tasks until I worked with these two scientists and went through numerous different kinds of experiments that showed my physiology, how my brain can sense danger before danger is going to be told.
What kind of test?
This was a very simple test, one of the first ones I did, and it was where you would sit in front of a computer and you were going to be shown an assortment of photographs. But in some of those photographs, there would be, and these are all real photographs, not like animated or anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
The photographs were of like a horrifying car accident, or maybe it's a murder, or they're just like they're photographs with a lot of intense negative energy, or a scary crash of some sort. So you would be hooked up to these different things. I don't know if it was testing I'm never good at remembering.
Was it
exactly.
Is the sound turned on your computer right now? I don't know. Okay, it may have gone away. Was it like I don't know, like electrodes you see, like where they put the stickers on you?
Which ones on the head? These are ones that were on your fingers, and they detected your pulse and your heart rate and things like that. And so what they were looking for was, could your body physically sense danger before it was coming?
Before your eyes actually saw it.
Yes. So before the scary photo would come up, my body would raise in numbers, whether it was the heartbeat or the sweat or the pulse, things would raise up in there to show that the fear was coming. And I had done, these were very interesting experiments because I learned stuff about myself, which was one, I didn't like looking at scary pictures.
Well, yeah, I'm sure.
Because afterwards it was like hard for me sometimes to get them out of my mind. I would see them, again later, and it was like, oh, who wants to see that?
So they would show you
like a series of pictures before.
Pictures that would scare you.
Yeah.
A field, a park, like nice, pleasant photos. And then all of a sudden, and they wouldn't know when this would be with a random number generator. So no one would know when the scary photo.
And so then they would put a scary picture would be in the mix, and you would anticipate that scary picture. I do want to go back to one thing. Now, when you went on this retreat with the guy that died, and you mentioned that you dreamed and felt it coming, and do you think that was like his disembodied spirit trying to grab onto you, trying to, I don't know if possession is the correct word, but trying to stick around?
Well, possession feels more like the right word.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not areas I like to talk about or things but I can tell you that it was a very real experience.
Mm.
And uh, and I've since learned, from many other different people that I've maybe taken. No one ever became another guru or anything. That was the one thing I learned from that, is no one is ever going to be that for me, but that I can learn different things from different people, and protecting yourself and being strong in who you are is how you approach these things, not randomly being, I was 15 years old, 16 years old, and
Yeah.
I'm looking in sick bodies,
Yeah. That's
Mm.
that's a little extreme.
I didn't go to high school then. My girlfriends were going to high school. I was out here in California living a hippie commune life, and looking inside doing healing on bodies.
Mm. Yeah. That's a definite change in
I love that because it feels
societal
like you've
change.
lived.
Yeah.
Oh, so I I was thinking that I wanted to share a remote viewing story that I thought. Would you like to hear a remote?
Now,
viewing
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Now,
story?
just to lead it off, you also do remote viewing, um, and we know Michelle does remote viewing.
Mhm.
So, yeah, let's hear now. I'm an utter failure at remote viewing. I tried it. I failed. It doesn't work for me.
He really
There's
didn't
no-
try that hard.
I have no perception, nor do I have time. So,
No, there's no failing. There's no
Yeah.
failing. And everyone, in fact, when I've done this with friends in my house, always the person who's the most skeptical, who says they cannot do it, he's the one who draws the exact picture. So, part of the thing that I feel, I've never been trained to do remote viewing.
mhm.
I just met with Russell and Dean, and they said, we'd like to try this precognitive remote viewing with you.
And those were
Like,
those
try
two.
it.
Those were those guys that did the picture test on you.
Yes, and they're
Okay.
also Russell has a recent film out called Third Eye Spies, which tells you the whole
I think I've
story
seen the
about how
commercial.
remote viewing began, and how it was a secret operation at Stanford University for
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah.
And he classified it, him and his son. His son is a lawyer.
Well, I like that
And-
documentary, The Men Who Stare at Goats. That's
I've met with some of those men.
Yeah.
And I got to meet some of these amazing people that were part of that program then, and be able to be a subject and a participant in some of their experiments, and end up becoming friends with some of them. So
That's awesome.
yeah, I'll bet that
Yeah.
was quite interesting. I mean, as long as you don't get snatched up by the government to be made into a not a tool for money, but a tool for
Evil.
world domination.
well, there were probably some times that occurred to me in my mind every now and then, with a little bit of fear, like, oh God, I hope somebody doesn't pick me up off the street. But
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
as people start talking about me.
Or offer you the that choice you can't refuse.
Oy.
so
James.
here's an example. And there are different types of remote viewing. I never called it remote viewing, but that's what we were doing when we were doing medical diagnosis.
Mhm.
There was a conference at the Institute of Noetic Sciences here in Petaluma, California, and it was called Mind and Matter, and it attracted a lot of scientists and people, and I think there was about 70 or 80 in attendance, and Russell was giving a talk. And he said, now we're going to do an experiment that I do. And this is one that he does often. He does these in all his talks he gives. And there's something about Russell, which is what I'm trying to share with you when you're saying, I can't ever do remote viewing, is there's something about when someone sort of gives you permission that it's okay for you to just relax and see what picture you might see. And whatever it is that comes up is okay. And it doesn't matter, what you see is fine. Somehow you can kind of calmly just go right in, which is what I experienced with Russell, and draw what he's looking for. You don't, I'm not 100% person. I don't get them right 100% of the time. I have times just like you where it feels like, oh God, could I really be doing this? Could I ever do this? And then other times where I go like, oh my God, it was as clear as can be. So it's just like famous people that do athletic sports. They have times they're doing whatever their home runs or whatever the thing is, but then they have times where it's not going to work like that. It's no different in remote viewing or any of the, you know, I don't believe in this thing that, oh, every time you can do this, you know what I mean? It's like everything in life. You have stronger times than ones that aren't. So he says, I have something in a paper bag, and I would like all of you to take a paper and pen and draw what this is. So everybody takes a few minutes to draw what it is. And he asks out in the audience, can you tell us what you drew? And I'm in the back, and I'm like one of those students that's, raising the hand like this. Oh. And he said, okay, Gail, So I say, oh, it's an 8-armed Shiva made out of brass sitting on a lotus base. And I can't draw that. I could just draw some looking thing, but I could write down that that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he looked astonished on the stage for that moment. And he just said, we have to stop. He said, I just want you to know, Gail is a friend of mine, but I purchased this item this morning that I put in this bag. So I know she's never seen this in my home or anywhere. And he picks out an 8-armed Shiva sitting on a lotus base made of brass. The whole audience was like, wow.
Is this real?
Is this real? Then Daryl Bem gets up, and he is a Cornell University professor, and he teaches how psychic people do things to trick you with psychic things. He debunks, he does things. He's not a skeptic. He just shows you, this is how I can read your mind.
He's a mentalist.
Yes, exactly. And of the nicest man. So he's up there and he's doing this thing about how he's collected these objects and nobody knows what they are. And how, we find out later, he tells you later how the trick is done. And he does this with also like words in a book, how people could say, oh, I could tell what word you're looking at. So he teaches you how they do those kind of things. So he says, there was someone here in the audience and I asked her to bring me stuff in and she did. And I have it right here in the bag. And I think I was sitting next to Jeffrey Mishlove. And I turned to him and I said, oh, it's a sand dollar. And he's up there on the stage and he goes to open the bag and he takes out the sand dollar. And the people all that were sitting around me that heard me say sand dollar before. So he hears the audience responding about my sand dollar. And after he gets off the stage, he comes up to me and he says, Gail, what I was doing on stage, he said, was magic. He said, but what you did, that was real. Do you think you'd like to try my experiment I'm doing right now? And his experiment was with sexual pictures instead of violent pictures. Because the idea is that when we're out there searching, and they have more of an emotional charge around them. That's why, some kind of pictures of scary things, of course you're going to have an emotional reaction. But sexual is a different kind of reaction. Well, sure enough, he had very positive results where people would be able to sense the sexual photos before. It was a very fun experiment to do because you would see two people in romantic positions, or it was very, very, it was sensual and sexual. It wasn't like a dirty kind of thing, you know what I mean? And,
or scary.
That showed that, and not scary. It was sensual. Anyhow, so there was another, and I was going to add I don't know how much time we have left. We don't have much time left, so I'm not going to add anything. I'll let you ask me anything else.
Okay.
Sorry if I keep talking.
No, you're good. So you kind of, I don't know, it sounds like you exercise these latent skills in maybe would you call it a self-help organization or or would you call it a cult where it
Yeah.
sounds like, one guy
I
was at
felt it was
top.
more like a cult.
Yeah, I mean, he's trying to
It felt more
gather
like a
money,
cult to me.
and he's bringing you guys in. Was he at least did he at least pay you for these conferences you went on, or did he have you as kind of,
Slave labor.
yeah?
Oh no. As Russell said, he said, Gail, you were a shill.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you kind of exercised him there, where maybe you weren't focused on becoming a psychic or a medium or any of that, but you exercised and honed your skills in a shyster religious setting. And then and that's an interesting story about, you're on the retreat.
Scientific.
You were on the retreat with the guy that was dying, and how that's kind of how his spirit maybe
Actually,
latched onto
he's
you.
not there.
Oh, he wasn't there.
He's not at the. No, I have never met him physically.
Oh, okay.
now this remote
No.
viewing, have you ever used your remote viewing to help people find things, or
Well, I've had experience. I've had experiences. I never know if I should call it remote viewing, but I had experiences where which will be too long to get into, but where I was asked about information on a missing case of where people were missing. I worked on a few missing persons cases, and they're very intense. You need to be a certain kind of personality, I think, to handle it.
Sure.
I think it's too much for me to do those, because I feel emotionally involved at the loss, and I'd rather leave that for others to do. But there was something I didn't realize I could do. But when I was asked to do missing persons, I was able to do things about missing persons. There's other things I learned, I didn't know I could hold an object and tell about a person, but I learned at one of the International Remote Viewing Association conferences, there was a woman, Bevy Jager, who was very famous in psychometry, and she gave out a penny to everyone. So 300 people were holding a penny, and that pennies had been carried by someone for a week on their body, except when they showered, and they were fresh minted new pennies. And when she gave me the penny in my hand, I closed my hand and had a complete, not only did I know everything about this person, like that they were a lawyer, they dressed in these nice suits. I said, but I think this is the guy I had lunch with 2 days ago. And so when I went out, I said, I think it's, oh God, I forget his name now. But anyways, whatever his name was. And sure enough, that's who the person was. So in that moment, I learned that, yes, I could hold objects and be able to tell things about objects. Or if we go to...
Now, is that the psychometry where you can feel
the energy
impressions from objects?
Yes, I think that's called psychometry, but I could be wrong on that also. I'm not an intellectual here.
Well, so what are some fun ways you use these talents in your everyday life?
Ooh,
well, I've known things about my children and family that shock them. And that's a joy.
I want this for my kids.
I'm glad Mom and Dad did not have any
I
of
am
that.
not a jealous type. I'm not that kind of possessive married woman thing, even though my husband and I have been together for 27 years. Never once have I asked him this question in 27 years. But he calls me up and he says, I'll be back later. And I said, are you sitting in a hot tub with a blonde?
Oh.
He said, his mouth fell open,
I can only imagine.
He's never been sitting in 26 years with a it's not like he does that on a regular basis.
Right.
And he was so shocked.
I'm glad Mom and Dad didn't have that.
Yeah, it's things like this. I asked someone I know, they came in and I said, did you eat mushrooms yesterday? And there was a whole group of people and they said, oh, no. And then later they came up to me and they said, I never ate mushrooms in my life, but I ate them yesterday. How did you know? So those are fun ones. And there was the last thing I'll list, and a happy one was a friend that we visited in Amsterdam. I had a dream about him while we were in Italy before we were going to come back. And in the dream, he was completely clean shaven and we were having passionate, amazing sex together. And I said to him,
wait a minute, you're interested in men. Why are me and you having sex together in this dream? And what happened to your beard? Well, we go to meet him a week later, and he walks into the restaurant completely clean shaven.
Were you like, oh no,
30 years.
Here it comes.
And he says, when you went to Italy, I met the man of my dreams, and we went off to Prague together and had the most hot, passionate sex ever.
So you were
blushing.
You were like, yeah, I know.
The only reason he would take me to Prague with him would be if I shaved my beard. So even though I had not shaved in all those years, I did it for him.
So
that was a happy.
Oh, how funny.
You were, I guess, seeing through the eyes of his significant other.
Yes.
Huh.
It was seeing through. I only saw through his eyes because I don't know who the significant other was, but it was. And then later, after I described to him what had happened, he said to me, he said, I have to be careful now. He said,
yeah. What else do you know?
So,
Spill it.
All right. We've got 4 minutes left. And it says on here, spoon bending in the email.
Yes.
Oh, yes. I wish
this is our first time hearing about spoon bending.
Isn't that like mind over matter?
God, you can't pause for me to run up and get you my fork,
Sure,
right?
sure, we got plenty of time.
Go ahead. We'll
all right, let me get you the fork.
We'll run through some comments real quick. All right, so Jennifer, hello Jennifer. Jennifer says on here, her great-grandmother, her father just told her about a few months ago, was a psychic.
That would be interesting to find out.
That would. Now, our grandparents, our great-grandfather did use dowsing rods for water. So, and that's interesting to find out. Hi, Ryan.
Okay.
And hi, Jennifer, and hi, Lisa, or hi, James, and hi, Lisa. Thanks for joining us. We're about to finish the show out, Lisa. So, join us for the last few minutes. We're about to hear about spoon bending and see maybe some spoon bending action. Now, I can bend a spoon.
With my hands.
Well, okay, your average spoon. I can't bend any wooden spoons. I can't bend plastic spoons. But a simple, crappy steel or tin spoon, I can usually make it through.
All right. Well, I'll try and squish it in as fast as I can.
Okay, well, if we have to
run over, it's fine.
We'll
all
run
right,
over.
So what it is I was at another IRVA conference, International Remote Viewing Association conference, and they had a guest speaker who was going to do a spoon bending class. So, or actually not class, they called it spoon bending party. And up until then, the only thing I'd ever heard of was Uri Geller and his spoon bending.
Mm-hmm.
And, the scientist Russell that I worked with, Uri was one of the subjects they worked with that they did amazing things with. So I knew that spoon bending existed, but I didn't believe it because I felt, this is how I feel about all these things. Until I experience them, I don't say they don't exist and I don't say they do. But if I see it or feel it or have my own experience, then I can talk from my thought about it. So this was another one with a lot of people, at least 200 people in the room. And I think it was about 200. And it was in the room inside one of those, in the convention center, inside of a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And when you came into the room, the whole floor was covered with tablecloths. And on top of the tablecloths were boxes of silverware that was spoons and forks.
Mm-hmm.
And the man who's passed away, but if you want to know about spoon bending, he's who you should look up. His name is Jack Huck. I think it's Houck. Houck, something like that. And he was an amazing spoon bending party man. So he says, everybody go and take a walk around the silverware. And when you feel the piece of silverware that calls to you, pick that silverware up. So I pick up a spoon. I sit back in my seat. And I don't know what's going to go on. Like, do you bend it yourself? How does this work?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little woman sitting behind me, and we haven't started yet because he's waiting for everyone to get back in their seats and hold up their prize silverware that they picked. And she's this little gray-haired old woman. I just told this story the other day. She was there only because she wanted to see her adult student, what he had grown up to become and do. And he was speaking at this conference.
Mm-hmm.
So when she heard Spoon Party, she thought, oh, I'll go to this while because I'm visiting here, seeing my student.
This sounds fun. Yeah.
So she's sitting there behind me holding the spoon. We haven't even begun. And to my amazement and shock, the spoon just bent over like this while she was just sitting there holding the spoon. She didn't even touch the top or anything.
So they just hold the handle.
Well, I'm just saying this is the one.
Just the one lady
did this. So I'm yelling to Jack, you have to see what's going on here. This woman, what this is. So for whatever reason, here's a woman who has never thought about anything psychic or paranormal. She was only there to see her student who'd grown up to a man. And she came to this party for no reason. And just by holding the spoon and whatever about her, I have no idea, it just bent over. So then he says, he takes up and he shows her spoon to everybody. And then he says, now we're going to start the party. So the party involves you holding this object and screaming at it at the top of your lungs, bend, bend, bend.
Sounds like a wild party.
It was. And my spoon was not bending. And
imagine, just for a second, imagine
you're the housekeeper.
No, the conference room next door who's doing an insurance sales meeting, and through the wall they just hear,
bend,
30, 40
bend.
people yelling, bend, bend, bend. And they're just...
Not only that, he said he used to use, hotel silverware, but now they bring their own boxes.
Oh, I can imagine. The
back at the Hilton and every one of you. So you're yelling, bend, bend. My spoon doesn't work. I'm feeling like a failure. And like, gee, this little old lady behind me's bending and she's not even in the field here. So I go out and I say, I got to find a different piece of silverware that speaks to me better. So I go out and I see this fork and I pick up the fork and I come back and I'm sitting at my seat and again, I'm screaming, bend, bend, bend. And then this amazing thing happens where it felt like the whole metal part, the long part of the fork,
mm-hmm.
the handle, it felt like it turned into liquid and that I could see molecules or something, even though I'm not scientific. I don't even know if there's molecules in there, but whatever's in there, I'm seeing molecules. And in that moment, I say, this is it. And I just twist the fork around twice like it's nothing. And then I just touch the tongs, the top part, and each one bends down. And I'm in complete awe. So I'm going to show it to you now. So here's the fork.
Oh my gosh.
So you
see the bending?
Yeah, you can't call that a fork anymore, though.
Oh, I can't tell with my computer.
Yeah, we can see it. It's spun around at the neck, and then and the tines are...
Okay, if you've intentionally ever tried to do that with a fork, I will tell you, it's very difficult.
Not only this, I can't unbend it.
Looks like you made a prison weapon.
Yes, that, my friend, is a shank.
I want to say that I will now say, yes, spoon bending is a very real thing. There are some people who are very talented at it that don't even know, like the little old lady that was sitting behind me. There's other people that, like myself, I'm able to do it, but it's not my talent. I have a wonderful friend that once she discovered that she could do this, she went home and she could bend steel. She took rods, big rods like this, and would just bend them like this. She has like a bending talent. You know what I'm saying?
You don't... Yeah, she needs to be very careful when she goes to dinner at a restaurant, because she'll get food all over her chin and all over her blouse. It'll be just everywhere.
When I came home, I had my kids bending spoon. We were all out here yelling at spoons.
Bend. That's awesome.
What about your husband? How does he feel when he comes home to eat dinner and his silverware is...
I owe my husband my whole connection to all that scientific community, because if he did not tell them, are you interested in my wife? She has dreams. Like just yesterday, she dreamt that the cleaning lady's son is throwing up. He said, then the phone rang in the morning. She's not coming to clean. Her son is throwing up. Do you want those? That kind of person? They said yes. And that's how I met Dean and Russell. So my husband is very supportive, but he's a graduate of Yale and MIT, and he's got a very scientific mind. And so the kind of things that happened with me was not his normal. When we met when he was 10 and I was 12, and then we didn't know or see each other for 20 years, and then he called me and we fell in love and got married and had a baby and la la la. So it was a very romantic thing. But apparently I was reading his mind back in 7th grade when all of a sudden I turned to him in homeroom and said, "David Levitt, did you want to kiss me?"
Oh.
And he creeped across the room.
In 7th grade?
Yes, and I had been reading his mind at that moment because he was just very attracted to me, even though we were different ages. And so when we got together in 1993 and became an instant couple together, I started having lots of things that were very helpful for him. Like he was late for a meeting 2 hours away in Palo Alto for interval research. And I was driving down the road and I knew that he was going to need me for some reason. And I didn't have a cell phone. And so I drove back to the house and I said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "I can't find the keys to my car." And I just bent down out of nowhere without even looking and just picked up the keys and said, "Here." So I think he's very supportive of my ways. And he's also, as a scientist, he created the Esp Trainer App, which is free. And I highly recommend it if you've never tried it. It helps you learn about how to guess behind the 4 colors. It was designed from the machine that was used to train the military when Russell was training them during the Stanford project. And then Russell had him do a new app recently for remote viewers, and you should try that one, especially since you're feeling something you can't do. It's a way of teaching you how to sense where you think the picture is, and that one's called Stargate Esp, and it's named after the program that they had run. And these are all Russell's programs that he used to train, put into now the 21st century, Apple Apple apps. It is not on Android, but it is on the Apple.
So the first one is Esp Trainer.
Right, and it should be 4 squares.
Yes, I see that one. What's the next one?
Stargate.
And then that one, you're picking where do you think the picture is.
Okay. And the next one is.
And the other one, you're being asked questions about the picture. You're using a different part for the training.
And what is it called?
Stargate Esp.
Stargate
Esp.
Yeah, it's downloading on my phone right now. I'm going to try it, and I'll
hone your abilities.
I have no perception, none at all.
You do.
I know everyone says that, and then they put me to the test, and then they walk away shaking their heads.
Everybody has perceptions.
Yeah.
So before we go, Gail, we would like to share with the listeners again your upcoming podcast. I'm super excited to hear it. When are you launching? It's called Small Medium at Large.
A Small Medium at Large.
And where can we find it?
It will be on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, and we'd have to check with Michelle on what the rest of them would be.
Okay, Michelle can get with us, and that's.
When is it launching?
Yeah,
it's going to launch sometime in August.
Oh, I'm so excited.
We're going to have our meeting on what the launch is, and there'll be a website, a smallmediumatlarge.co. But the one thing I'd love to let your listeners know, if anyone's interested and likes any of my stories and you want to actually read the full spoon and fork bending story, you can go to gailhayssen.medium.com.
Yep, we've got that. It's on the screen right now at the bottom, and it will be in the show notes. And and you'll reach out to us when you do go live on your podcast. Reach out to us. And
how exciting!
Yeah, we'd like to plug that and let people know when it comes out. Who's your first interview going to be with?
Well, I've already interviewed. I don't know how we're going to schedule them, but I've already interviewed Sally Rhinefeather, who's the daughter of J.B. Rhine. He's the man who coined the word ESP and started the first parapsychology college university courses at Duke University. and they've had the Rhine Research for many, many years. And then I have Stanley Krippner, who is an incredible psychologist. He's just released a new book called Understanding the Allure of Suicide. He's an amazing man, and he was studying dreams back in the 50s at Maimonides Center in Brooklyn. He's an amazing person. I have another one I did with our friend Russell Targ. I have Dean Radin coming up. I'm going to be interviewing him August 9th. And then I have another friend, Nick Cook, who writes all these amazing books. And he's now going into the fields of adding different things about parapsychology. But he was a jet propulsion writer for science magazines, and he's branching off into paranormal studies now.
I love it.
Yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be fun
Awesome.
for sure. And before we go, Una Hefferman says thank you. She loved the stories.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining us, everyone. And thank you, Gail. This was fun. And reach out to us. We want to talk to you when you go live and announce it then.
Yeah.
Okay.
We would love to share your go live date for your podcast on one of our shows.
Yep.
Thank you. I will write that down, and I just think it's wonderful that a brother and sister team join together to do this, because brothers and sisters have psychic connection. Remember, we're all connected.
I agree with that.
She probably does. The brother.
I have to drag him along.
He has. I love hearing the stories, but I honestly no perception. We're
gonna test that with these apps.
Yeah, the genie could walk right through me. Wouldn't recognize it.
Take those apps. You'll build up some
intuition,
some skills. All right.
Yes.
Thank you
Gail.
so much.
It was so nice to meet you.
Yeah, and thanks
So nice to
everyone
meet
for
you.
joining us. And
Thank you.
we will we'll see you
next
guys
Friday.
next Friday at noon.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
and you'll let me know how to watch the show.
Yep. We'll
Yes,
send you
ma'am.
the link.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
All right.
Gail.
Bye-bye.
All right, have a great week.
You too.
Okay.
All right. And
That was it.
yep, that was